He built an empire on silence and fear. A Korean crime lord who chose power over family, control over chaos. He divorced to keep his world clean. No attachments, no weaknesses, no children. But some secrets don't stay buried. When his ex-wife appeared at his door with 4 identical 5-year-old faces staring up at him, the most dangerous man in America felt something he'd never known before. Terror. Not of enemies, not of betrayal, of fatherhood. 4 heartbeats, 4 pairs of eyes. One impossible truth that would shatter everything he'd built. If you want to see how 4 small children brought the Korean mafia to its knees, subscribe now and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. This story will break you in the most beautiful way. The house was silent in the way only power could buy. No clocks ticking, no neighbors. Just the hum of security systems and the distant pulse of a city that knew better than to disturb him. Jae-won stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, whiskey in hand, watching Los Angeles bleed neon into the night. 32 years old. Divorced, untouchable. The Korean syndicate's youngest Don, a man who'd turned his family's underground empire into something Wall Street envied and the FBI couldn't prove. He'd built this life brick by brutal brick. No room for softness, no space for regret. The divorce had been clean. Clinical. He'd told Min-seo the truth on their wedding night. He would never give her children. His world was too dark, too dangerous. She'd stayed anyway, hopeful, foolish. 3 years later, she'd finally believed him. That was 2 years ago. He hadn't thought of her since. The security alert barely registered, a soft chime his system made for approved visitors. Jae-won frowned. No one was approved at midnight. His hand moved instinctively toward the drawer where he kept his Glock, but he stopped. The cameras showed her. Min-seo. Standing at his private elevator, wearing a simple coat that had seen better days, her face older than he remembered. Tired. Beautiful in that devastating way that time carves into women who've survived something. And around her, like planets orbiting a sun, 4 small figures, 4 identical faces, dark hair, wide eyes, maybe 5 years old. Jae-won's chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with danger. He didn't move as the elevator opened. Didn't speak as Min-seo stepped into his sanctuary, this place he'd designed to keep the world out, with 4 children holding her hands, her coat, her courage. "Hello, Jae-won," she said quietly. Her voice was different, stronger, like she'd swallowed all her tears and they'd turned to iron. The children stared at him. Quadruplets. Impossible to tell apart except for the way they stood. One confident, one cautious, one curious, one completely unafraid. "These are your sons," Min-seo said. "This is Jin, Hajun, Minho, and Seojun. They turned 5 last month. I thought you should know." The words hit him like bullets he hadn't seen coming. Jae-won had orchestrated hits across 3 continents. He'd negotiated with cartels, buried rivals, built an empire on the bones of men who'd underestimated him. He did not freeze. He did not falter. But he froze now. "I don't have children," he said, his voice colder than he intended. "You do." Min-seo's eyes met his, and he saw something in them he'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt. Something worse. Certainty. "I was pregnant when we divorced. You were so sure you'd never be a father. So convinced. I didn't tell you because I knew exactly what you'd say. You had no right. I had every right." Her voice cut through his like glass. "You wanted no part of fatherhood. So I gave you exactly what you wanted. Nothing. I raised them alone, fed them, loved them, kept them safe from your world." One of the boys, the confident one, stepped forward. Jin, maybe. His small face was solemn, too serious for 5 years old. "Are you really our dad?" he asked. Jae-won looked at the child, at the shape of his eyes, the line of his jaw, at 4 miniature versions of himself staring up at him like he was something between a stranger and a myth. He wanted to lie. But lies required breath, and he'd forgotten how to breathe. "Why now?" he asked Min-seo, ignoring the question that was tearing him apart. "Why bring them here?" Her expression cracked, just slightly. "Because I'm dying." The room tilted. "Lung cancer. Stage 4. I have maybe 6 months." Her voice didn't shake. It should have. "I didn't come here for money. I didn't come here for forgiveness. I came here because they deserve to know who their father is before I'm gone. And because you deserve to know what you threw away when you chose this empire over everything else. Jaewon's fingers tightened around his glass. The whiskey inside trembled, the only part of him that dared to move. 4 pairs of eyes, 4 small heartbeats, 4 lives he'd never wanted, 4 sons he'd never known existed. Get out, he whispered. Min Seo nodded slowly, like she'd expected nothing less. She turned to leave, gathering the children. But the fearless one, Seo-jun, the smallest, didn't move. He walked right up to Jaewon, tilted his head back, and smiled. You look sad, the boy said simply. Don't be sad. We're here now. Then he took Jaewon's hand. And the most dangerous man in America felt his empire crack. They didn't leave. Jaewon had expected Min Seo to walk out with her impossible truth and her 4 small weapons, leaving him to his silence and his whiskey. Instead, she'd turned at the elevator and said, They need to use the bathroom, and they're hungry. Unless you want 4 children peeing on your marble floors, I suggest you let us stay for an hour. An hour became 2. 2 became the longest night of his life. Now, at 3 a.m, Jaewon sat in his pristine kitchen, a room he'd never actually cooked in, watching 4 5-year-olds devour cereal he didn't remember buying. Min Seo must have brought it. She'd brought everything. Snacks, juice boxes, a diaper bag full of the kind of chaos he'd spent his entire life avoiding. Jin ate with careful precision, organizing his cereal into neat piles. Hajun kept looking at Jaewon nervously, as if waiting for permission to exist. Minho asked questions about everything, the fancy fridge, the chandelier, why the spoons were so heavy. And Seo-jun, the fearless one, had claimed the seat next to Jaewon like he belonged there. Do you have guns? Minho asked suddenly, mid-bite. Min Seo's head snapped up. Minho! It's okay, Jaewon said quietly. He looked at the boy, at eyes that were his own. Why do you ask? Because Mom said you're important. Important people have guns on TV. I'm not on TV. But you're important? Jaewon didn't know how to answer that. Important, dangerous, damned. The words were interchangeable in his world. I keep people safe, he said finally. Like a superhero? No, not like that. Seo-jun tugged on his sleeve. Can we see your house? It's really big. You should be sleeping. We slept in the car, Jin said matter-of-factly. Mom drove for 6 hours. We're not tired. 6 hours. Jaewon looked at Min Seo. She was standing by the window now, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the city like she was memorizing it, like she was running out of time. Because she was. 6 months. He stood abruptly. Stay here, he told the boys. Don't touch anything. He crossed to Min Seo. She didn't turn. You should have told me, he said, low enough that the children wouldn't hear. Would it have changed anything? Her voice was empty. Would you have chosen them over this? She gestured at the penthouse, at the empire it represented. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, Jaewon. She finally looked at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. I didn't come here to punish you. I came here because I'm out of options. I have no family, no support system. When I'm gone, they'll go into foster care unless… No. The word came out harder than he intended. Min Seo blinked. No? They're not going into the system. He didn't know where the certainty came from. Didn't know why his chest felt like it was caving in. I'll figure something out. You'll figure something out, she repeated, and laughed bitterly. You can't even look at them without flinching. You think you can raise 4 5-year-olds? You think your world has room for them? My world doesn't matter. Your world is the only thing that's ever mattered to you. She was right. She was wrong. Jaewon turned back to the kitchen. 4 small boys. 4 impossible futures. They were arguing now, Jin and Minho fighting over who got the toy from the cereal box, Hajun trying to mediate, Seo-jun laughing at all of them. They sounded like chaos. They sounded like life. I'll make room, Jaewon said quietly. Min Seo's breath caught. What? I said I'll make room. He looked at her. You stay here. Tonight. Tomorrow. However long you need. Let me… His voice cracked. He forced it steady. Let me meet them. Let me figure out how to be what they need. You can't be what they need. You're a crime lord. Then I'll learn. J1, I'm not asking for your forgiveness. His eyes burned. I'm not asking for a second chance, but they're mine. You said it yourself, and I don't abandon what's mine. Mincio stared at him for a long moment. Then, impossibly, she smiled. Sad. Broken. Real. They have your stubbornness, she whispered. God help us all. Behind them, something crashed. They both spun. Hajun had knocked over a juice box. He stood frozen, eyes wide with terror, waiting for punishment. Jae-won crossed the room in 3 strides, knelt down, looked at his son, and said the first gentle thing he'd said in years. It's okay, it's just juice. Hajun's lip trembled. You're not mad? No. Mom said you're really scary. I am scary, but not to you. Never to you. He didn't know if that was true. Didn't know if he was capable of being anything other than what he'd built himself into. But when Hajun's small arms wrapped around his neck, clinging tight, Jae-won felt something inside him shatter. And for the first time in his life, he let it. Morning came too fast and too slow. Jae-won hadn't slept. He'd sat in his office, door cracked, listening to Mincio settle the boys into his guest rooms. Rooms that had never held guests, never heard laughter, never been anything but empty monuments to his isolation. Now they were full of whispers and small feet and the sound of children existing. At 7 a.m., his phone rang. Taimin, his second-in-command, his oldest friend, the only person allowed to call him directly. We have a problem, Taimin said without preamble. The Volkov shipment. Handle it. Silence. Handle it? Taimin's voice sharpened. Jae-won, this is a $2 million problem. You need to... I said handle it. I'm busy. Busy? You're never busy. What's going on? Jae-won looked toward the guest wing. Through the crack in his door, he could see Seo-jun wandering down the hallway, dragging a stuffed tiger, looking for something. Looking for him. I'll call you back, Jae-won said, and hung up. He found Seo-jun standing in the living room, staring at the abstract painting on the wall, a violent splash of black and red that cost more than most people's houses. Do you like it? Jae-won asked. Seo-jun wrinkled his nose. It looks angry. It is angry. Why do you have angry art? Good question. I don't know anymore. The boy looked up at him. Mom's sleeping. She sleeps a lot now. She says it's because she's tired. But I think it's because she's sick. Jae-won's throat tightened. Yes, she's very sick. Is she going to die? The question was so simple, so devastating. Yes, Jae-won said, because he wouldn't lie. Not to this child who looked at him with eyes that deserved truth. Seo-jun nodded slowly. That's why we're here, right? Because we need someone when she's gone. Yes. Are you going to take care of us? Jae-won knelt down. Eye level, man to boy, father to son. I don't know how to take care of children, he said honestly. I don't know how to be a father. I've spent my whole life being the opposite of what you need. What do we need? Kindness, patience, safety, love. Do you have those things? I don't know. I used to, before I became this. Seo-jun tilted his head. What are you? A killer, a criminal, a king of shadows. I'm someone who's made a lot of mistakes, Jae-won said instead. Mom says everybody makes mistakes. She says the important thing is what you do after. Wisdom from a 5-year-old, from his 5-year-old. Your mother is smarter than me, Jae-won said quietly. She says you're the smartest person she ever met. She says you just forgot how to be happy. The words hit like a knife between his ribs. Behind them, footsteps. Mincio appeared, wrapped in a robe he'd given her last night. She looked fragile in the morning light, translucent, like she was already halfway gone. Seo-jun, let your father breathe, she said gently. Your father. The words sat strange in the air. Seo-jun ran to her and she winced, just slightly, as he hugged her. Pain she was trying to hide. Jae-won saw it, recognized it. He'd seen enough people die to know what the end looked like. 6 months was optimistic. They need breakfast, Minso said, looking at Jae-won. Real breakfast, not cereal. I'll order something. They need routine. Stability, not room service and penthouses. They need... She stopped, swayed slightly. Jae-won caught her before she fell. She was so light. Too light. He lifted her easily, carried her to the couch, and she didn't protest. That scared him more than anything. "I'm fine," she whispered. "You're not." "I have to be. For them." "You don't. Not anymore." He looked at her. "Let me help. Let me figure this out. You focus on..." He couldn't say it. Couldn't say dying. "Focus on them. On the time you have. I'll handle everything else." "You can't just will yourself into being a father, Jae-won." "Watch me." She laughed. It turned into a cough. He got her water, held it while she drank, and tried to remember the last time he'd taken care of anyone. The other 3 boys appeared then. Jin, Hajun, Minho, standing in a small cluster, watching their mother with worried eyes that knew too much. "Is Mom okay?" Hajun asked in a small voice. "She's okay," Jae-won said, "but she needs to rest. So today you're with me." 4 faces turned to him, uncertain, hopeful, terrified. He knew the feeling. "What are we going to do?" Minho asked. Jae-won looked around his penthouse, this sterile monument to his success, this cage he'd built. "I have no idea," he admitted. "What do 5-year-olds do?" Jin raised his hand like he was in school. "We could go to the park." "The park." "Or the zoo," Minho added. "We like animals," Hajun said quietly. Seo-jun grinned. "Can we get ice cream?" Jae-won looked at Min-seo. She was smiling through her exhaustion. "They're simple creatures," she said. "Parks, playgrounds, ice cream, attention, love, that's all they want. All they want." As if love was simple. As if he had any idea how to give it. But when 4 pairs of eyes looked at him like he was capable of anything, like he was someone worth believing in, Jae-won made a choice. He'd built an empire on fear. Maybe he could build a family on hope. "Get dressed," he told the boys. "We're going out." And for the first time in a decade, the Korean Don closed his laptop, silenced his phone, and walked away from his empire. Toward something infinitely more terrifying. Toward fatherhood. The park was a battlefield Jae-won had never trained for. Screaming children, anxious parents. The smell of hot dogs and sunscreen and something indefinably innocent that made his skin crawl with unfamiliarity. He stood at the edge of the playground like a general surveying enemy territory, hands in his pockets, sunglasses hiding eyes that had witnessed executions but had never seen a child go down a slide. His 4 sons ran ahead, Jin leading with careful confidence, Minho chattering about everything, Hajun staying close to his brothers, and Seo-jun already halfway up the climbing structure before Jae-won could process what was happening. "Should we?" he started, looking at Min-seo. She'd insisted on coming despite her exhaustion. Now she sat on a bench, wrapped in a cardigan even though it was 70 degrees, smiling at her children like she was memorizing them. "Let them play," she said softly. "They're children. It's what they do. What if they fall? Then they fall, and they get back up. That's also what they do." Jae-won watched Seo-jun reach the top of the structure, arms spread wide like he'd conquered Everest. The boy looked back at him, grinning, waiting for acknowledgement. Jae-won lifted his hand. A small wave. Uncertain. Seo-jun's smile could have powered the city. Something in Jae-won's chest cracked wider. His phone buzzed. Tae-min, again. He'd been calling all morning. Jae-won had been ignoring him. The Volkov situation, the shipment delays, the territorial disputes in Long Beach. Problems that would have consumed him 48 hours ago now felt distant. Unreal. He silenced the phone. "You can't ignore your world forever," Min-seo said, reading his mind the way she always had. "I'm not ignoring it. I'm choosing something else for today. For today. And tomorrow, next week, when I'm gone and you're alone with 4 children who need breakfast and bedtime stories and parent-teacher conferences, what happens to your empire then? I'll figure it out. You keep saying that, like willpower is enough, like you can just decide to be someone different." Her voice was gentle, sad. "I know you, Jae-won. I know what you built yourself into. You don't just walk away from that. Watch me. I am watching you. And I'm terrified." He looked at her then. really looked. At the woman he'd married because she was convenient and beautiful and understood silence. The woman he'd divorced because he'd been too much of a coward to let her hope. The woman who'd carried his children alone, raised them in his absence, and was now dying with a grace he could never possess. "I'm terrified too," he admitted. It was the first time he'd said those words in 20 years. Minseo's eyes filled with tears. "They deserve better than fear. They deserve better than me. But I'm what they have." He turned back to the playground. Jin was helping Hajun across the monkey bars. Minho was digging in the sand. Seo-jun was making friends with another child, laughing like the world was safe. "So I'll become what they need. Or I'll die trying. You can't do this alone. I have money, resources, I'll hire help, nannies, tutors, whatever they need. They need you." Minseo stood slowly, painfully, crossed to him, put her hand on his arm. "Not your money. Not your empire. You. The man I married. The one who used to read poetry and paint watercolors and believed in something beyond power. That man died a long time ago. Then resurrect him. Because these boys need a father, not a crime lord playing pretend." Before he could respond, screaming erupted from the playground. Not playful screaming. Real fear. Jae-won moved on instinct, crossing the distance in seconds. A crowd had formed around the climbing structure. Parents shouting, children crying. And in the center, Seo-jun, hanging from the top platform by his hands, feet dangling 8 feet above the ground. He'd tried to reach for something, lost his balance, and now he was slipping. Jae-won didn't think. He lunged forward, positioned himself directly below, arms up. "Let go," he called. "I've got you." Seo-jun's face was white with terror. "I'll fall. You'll fall into me. I promise. I won't let you hit the ground." "Promise?" "I promise." The boys' fingers were slipping. Parents were calling 911. Someone was shouting about lawsuits. The world was chaos and noise and panic, but Jae-won's voice was steady. "Trust me, Seo-jun, let go." And his son did. Fell. Jae-won caught him perfectly, absorbed the impact, held the small trembling body against his chest as Seo-jun burst into tears, huge gasping sobs of relief and residual fear. "I've got you," Jae-won murmured over and over. "I've got you. You're safe. I've got you." The other 3 boys came running. Jin grabbed Jae-won's leg. Hajun was crying in sympathy. Minho kept asking if Seo-jun was okay, if he was hurt, if they needed a doctor. And Jae-won stood there, in the middle of a public park, surrounded by strangers and sunshine and his 4 sons, and felt the last wall around his heart crumble completely. "You caught me," Seo-jun whispered into his shoulder. "Always," Jae-won said. "I'll always catch you." It was a promise that terrified him. It was a promise he meant. Later, after ice cream and reassurances and way too much sugar, they returned to the penthouse. The boys were exhausted, crashing on the couch in a pile of small limbs and sleepy eyes. Minseo had fallen asleep in the car. Jae-won had carried her inside, tucked her into the guest bed, and watched her breathe for too long. 6 months. Maybe less. Now he stood in his office, door closed, phone in hand. 23 missed calls from Taemin, 14 from his lawyer, 6 from associates he'd ignored. He called Taemin back. "Where the fuck have you been?" Taemin's voice was sharp, worried. "The Volkov deal is falling apart. They think you're showing weakness. There's talk of a move against us. We need you here. Now. I can't." "You can't?" Jae-won, what's going on? How did he explain? How did he tell his oldest friend that everything had changed in the space of a midnight visit? That 4 children had done what bullets and betrayal never could, made him question everything? "I have children," he said finally. 4 sons. They're 5 years old. I didn't know they existed until 2 days ago. Silence. Then, "What?" "Minseo, my ex-wife. She was pregnant when we divorced. She never told me. And now she's dying, and they're mine, and I..." His voice cracked. "I can't do both. I can't be what they need and what the Empire needs." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm choosing them. Jae-won, I built this world to feel powerful, to control something, anything. Because I was a scared kid who watched his father get murdered and decided fear was better than grief. He looked toward the living room where 4 small boys slept. But they make me feel something I haven't felt in 20 years. What? Human. Taman was quiet for a long moment. You're really going to walk away? Not walk away, step back. Delegate. You've been ready to lead for years. Take it. Run the operations. Keep things smooth. I'll consult. I'll be available for the big decisions, but day to day, that's yours now. Because of 4 kids you just met. Because of 4 kids who are mine, who need me, who make me want to be something other than this. And if the empire falls apart without you, then it falls apart. Empires always do. But sons? His throat tightened. Sons are forever. Another silence. Then Taman laughed, short, disbelieving. You've lost your mind. Probably. Your father would never... My father died chasing power. Left me alone, terrified. I won't do that to them. I won't be him. So what are you going to be? Jaewon looked at his reflection in the window. At the man he'd built. Cold. Controlled. Empty. I don't know yet, he said honestly. But I'm going to find out. He hung up, turned off his phone, and walked back to the living room. 4 small boys. 4 impossible futures. He sat on the floor beside the couch. Seojun stirred, reached out in his sleep and grabbed Jaewon's hand. And the most dangerous man in America held on like it was the only thing keeping him alive. Because maybe it was. The first week was chaos. Jaewon learned that children were louder than gunfire, messier than crime scenes, and more exhausting than hostile takeovers. They needed constant attention, food, entertainment. Emotional regulation he didn't know how to provide. They fought over toys, cried over invisible injuries, asked impossible questions at 3 a.m, and they were the most terrifying, beautiful thing he'd ever experienced. Minseo lasted 4 days before she collapsed. Jaewon found her in the hallway, unconscious, and called his private doctor, a man who'd stitched bullet wounds and asked no questions for 15 years. Dr. Chen examined her silently, then pulled Jaewon aside. She needs hospice care. Hospital. She has weeks, maybe days. No hospitals. Jaewon, she stays here. Get whatever equipment she needs. Hire nurses, whatever it costs. But she stays with her children until the end. Dr. Chen looked at him strangely. You've changed. No, I've just stopped pretending. They converted his master bedroom into a medical room, brought in a hospital bed, IV poles, monitors that beeped too loudly in the silence. Minseo protested weakly, said she didn't want the boys to see her like this, but Jaewon was firm. They need to say goodbye, he said. And you need to be here, with them, until you can't be anymore. She cried. He held her hand. And neither of them acknowledged that he was holding the hand of a dying woman he'd once loved and forgotten, and was learning to love again in a completely different way. The boys adapted with the resilience of children. They tiptoed around their mother's room, drew pictures for her walls, told her about their days in whispered voices. Jin organized a schedule for visits so she wouldn't get too tired. Minho brought her flowers from the building's garden. Hajun sang to her, off-key, beautiful, and Seojun climbed into bed beside her every night, careful of the tubes and wires, and held her hand until he fell asleep. Jaewon watched them grieve something that hadn't happened yet, and learned that fatherhood meant witnessing unbearable pain and pretending you were strong enough to carry it. On day 9, Taemin showed up unannounced. Jaewon answered the door to find his second-in-command standing in the hallway, expression unreadable. We need to talk, Taemin said. They sat in Jaewon's office, a room that felt like a relic from another life. Taemin looked around at the closed laptop, the silent phones, the family photos that had started appearing on shelves. You're really doing this, he said. I am. The Volkov situation is resolved, for now, but there's talk. People are wondering where you are. What you're doing, whether you've gone soft. Let them wonder. Jaewon, you built this empire on fear and respect. If they think you're weak, I don't care what they think. Taemin leaned forward. Then care about this. Viktor Volkov wants a meeting, face to face. He says if you don't show, he's pulling out of the alliance. Which means we lose our East Coast connections, which means chaos. When? Tomorrow night. Jaewon looked toward the living room, where the boys were watching a movie with one of the nurses, toward Minseo's room, where death waited patiently. I can't. You have to. I can't leave them, not now. Minseo could... He stopped. Couldn't say it. I promised I'd be here. Then bring me. Let me represent you. Victor won't accept that. You know how he is. Old school, paranoid. It's me or nothing. Then it's nothing. Taemin slammed his hand on the desk. You're throwing away everything we built. We built it on blood and darkness. We built it on being the kind of men who don't have families or futures or anything beyond the next deal. And maybe that was enough when I was alone. But I'm not alone anymore. Jae-won stood. I have sons, 4 boys who need me to be more than a crime lord, who need me to show them that there's something beyond power, something worth choosing. And what do you think you're teaching them by letting your empire crumble? I'm teaching them that they matter more. That's naive. Maybe, but it's true. Taemin stared at him. You've really lost it. Or maybe I've finally found it. Before Taemin could respond, Seo-jun appeared in the doorway. He looked at Taemin curiously, then at Jae-won. Mom wants you, he said quietly. She says it's important. Jae-won's heart stopped. Is she? She's okay. She just wants to talk to you. Alone. He looked at Taemin. We're done here. Jae-won, I said we're done. Handle Victor however you need to. Sign whatever deal keeps the peace. I trust you. And if I can't, then let it burn. He walked out, leaving Taemin sitting in the ruins of the empire they'd built together. Minseo was awake, propped up on pillows, looking impossibly small in the hospital bed. But her eyes were clear, focused. Sit, she said, patting the edge of the bed. He sat. I'm dying, she said simply. I know. Soon. Days. Maybe hours. I can feel it. Minseo, let me talk. I need to say this while I can. She took his hand. Her grip was weak. You're doing better than I expected. With them. You're trying. I see it. I'm failing constantly. Welcome to parenthood. We're all failing constantly. The trick is loving them through the failure. She smiled. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't let this world touch them. Don't let what you are become what they are. They're good. Pure. They deserve normal lives. School, friends, soccer practice, not bodyguards and bulletproof cars and the weight of an empire they didn't ask for. I'll protect them. I know you will. But protection isn't enough. They need freedom, joy, the chance to be ordinary. Her eyes filled with tears. Promise me you'll give them that, even if it means walking away from everything else. I promise. Say it. Say what you're promising. I promise I'll give them a normal life. I promise I'll keep them away from my world. I promise I'll be their father, not their king. His voice broke. I promise I'll love them the way you loved them, completely, without condition. Good. She closed her eyes. That's all I needed to hear. Minseo, I'm tired, Jae-won. So tired. But I'm not afraid anymore, because I know they'll be okay. You'll make sure they're okay. I will. Even if it costs you everything? He thought about the empire, the power, the fear and respect and control he'd spent 2 decades building. Thought about Viktor Volkov and Taemin and the world that was waiting for him to return. Then he thought about 4 small boys sleeping down the hall. About Jin's careful questions and Minho's constant chatter, and Hajun's quiet strength, and Seo-jun's fearless smile. Even if it costs me everything, he said. Minseo smiled. Then I can rest. She fell asleep holding his hand. She never woke up. Minseo died at dawn, quiet, peaceful. Surrounded by monitors that no longer beeped and children who were still sleeping and a man who'd forgotten how to cry, but remembered in the moment her chest stopped rising. Jae-won sat beside her for an hour. Just sat. Holding her cooling hand, memorizing her face. Thanking her silently for the impossible gift she'd given him. Not just sons, but a reason to become someone worthy of them. The nurses had left him alone with her. They understood. Death required witnesses, but grief required solitude. He touched her hair. Once dark and shining, now thin from treatments that hadn't worked. He touched her hand. The one that had held his on their wedding day, the one that had pushed him away during the divorce, the one that had held their sons when he wasn't there. "I'll keep my promise," he whispered. "All of them. I'll give them everything you wanted for them. Everything I never gave you." She didn't answer. But in the growing light, she looked at peace, and Jaewon knew he'd carry her last words forever. Even if it costs you everything. He woke Dr. Chen, made the arrangements, had Min Seo's body taken with the dignity she deserved. Then he sat in the hallway outside the boys' room, trying to figure out how to tell 4 5-year-olds that their world had just ended. There was no manual for this, no strategy, no empire-building tactics that translated to comforting grieving children. He was just a man who'd broken too many things, trying not to break the only things that mattered. When the boys woke, he gathered them in the living room. They knew something was wrong. Children always know. Jin sat straight-backed, preparing himself. Minho's eyes were already wet. Hajun held Jaewon's hand so tight it hurt. And Seojun, the fearless one, looked small for the first time since Jaewon had met him. "Your mother died this morning," Jaewon said. No sugarcoating, no metaphors about sleep or journeys, just truth. "She was very sick, and now she's gone, and I'm so sorry." Silence. Then Jin asked, "Did it hurt?" "No, she was sleeping. It was peaceful." "Was she scared?" Minho whispered. "No, she said she wasn't afraid anymore. She said she knew you'd be okay." "Will we?" Hajun's voice cracked. "Be okay?" Jaewon pulled him close, pulled all of them close. "I don't know. Probably not for a while. Losing someone you love, it's the hardest thing in the world. And it's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry." "Are you sad?" Seojun asked. "Yes." "Are you going to cry?" "Probably, when you're not looking, because I'm not very good at crying in front of people." "You can cry in front of us," Jin said seriously. "We won't tell anyone." And something about that, the permission from a 5-year-old to be human, broke the last piece of Jaewon's control. He cried. Not the way he'd cried as a child when his father died, silent, hidden, alone, but openly, honestly. With 4 small boys wrapped around him, sharing his grief because it was theirs too. "Is she in heaven?" Seojun asked eventually. "I think so," Jaewon said, "if there is one. Will we ever see her again? I don't know. Do you believe in heaven?" Jaewon thought about the men he'd killed, the sins he carried, the darkness he'd lived in for so long, the empire built on blood and fear and choices that haunted him. "I do now," he said. "Because she deserves one." Seojun nodded slowly, climbed deeper into Jaewon's lap, and all 4 boys ended up there, in a pile of grief and small bodies, and shared pain that felt both unbearable and strangely sacred. "What happens now?" Jin asked, ever practical even in devastation. "Now you stay with me, forever. You're mine, and I'm yours." "You promise?" "I promise. No matter what it costs, no matter what I have to give up. You 4 come first, always." "What about your work?" Minho asked. "Mom said you're important, that you have important work." Jaewon looked at each of them, at 4 futures he was responsible for. 4 chances to do something right in a life full of wrongs. 4 reasons to become someone different. "You're more important," he said, and he meant it more than he'd ever meant anything. The funeral was small, private. Just Jaewon, the boys, Dr. Chen, and the 2 nurses who'd cared for Min Seo in her final days. No press, no business associates, no one from his old life. He was done with that life. They buried her in a cemetery that overlooked the ocean. Min Seo had always loved the water, said it made her feel infinite. Now she was part of that infinity. The boys each placed a drawing on her casket. Jin had drawn their family, 5 stick figures holding hands. Minho had drawn flowers and stars. Hajun had drawn a heart. Seojun had drawn his mother with angel wings. "Goodbye, Mom," they whispered together. Jaewon said nothing. Words felt insufficient. Instead, he made a silent vow. "I'll be what they need. I'll give them what you asked for. I'll break myself apart and rebuild into something worthy of this gift you've given me." After the service, he took the boys to the new house in Pasadena. He'd bought it 3 days before Mincio died, knowing the penthouse was no place for children to grow up, knowing they needed space and normalcy and a yard where they could be loud without security teams hovering. 4 bedrooms, each one painted a different color. The boys had chosen themselves: blue for Jin, green for Minho, yellow for Hajun, red for Seojun. There was a backyard with a swing set he'd assembled badly, following YouTube tutorials at 2 in the morning, a kitchen that actually got used, a living room without priceless art, just comfortable furniture meant to be lived on. It looked nothing like his life before. It looked like home. "Is this where we live now?" Hajun asked, eyes wide. "This is where we live now," Jae-won confirmed. "Forever?" "Forever." Seojun ran through the house, exploring claiming spaces. Minho followed, asking about the neighborhood, the schools, whether there were other kids nearby. Jin stood close to Jae-won, uncertain. "Are you sure?" the boy asked quietly. "About what?" "About us. About wanting us here. About—" Jin's voice dropped to a whisper. "About being our dad." Jae-won knelt down, eye level. "I have never been more sure of anything in my entire life. You 4 are the best thing that's ever happened to me, even though I'm terrified, even though I have no idea what I'm doing, even though—" "We don't know what we're doing either," Jin interrupted. "We've never had a dad before, so maybe we can figure it out together?" "Together?" Jae-won agreed. "That sounds perfect." Taemin called that night after the boys were asleep in their new beds, in their new house, in their new life. "Victor pulled out," Taemin said without preamble. "The alliance is dead. We lost the East Coast connections. There are already moves being made, territory disputes, power plays. Without you at the helm, then handle it without me. Jae-won, I meant what I said. I'm out. You're in charge now. Do whatever you need to do to keep things stable. Make the deals. Manage the operations. I trust you. You built this empire. And now I'm building something else, something better. You're really walking away." "I'm really walking away." A long silence stretched between them. 15 years of partnership, of brotherhood forged in blood and business, of being the only family they'd allowed themselves. "She must have been something," Taemin said finally. "Your ex-wife, to make you choose this. She was everything. And I was too blind to see it until it was too late. But her sons, my sons, they're my second chance. The universe doesn't give many of those. I'm not wasting it. And if the empire falls apart, then it falls apart. Empires always do. They're built on fear, and eventually someone stops being afraid. But sons?" Jae-won looked toward the hallway where 4 small boys slept. "Sons are forever." "You sound different." "I am different. Or maybe I'm finally who I was supposed to be before everything went wrong. Before I chose power over everything else. Before I forgot that being strong doesn't mean being hard." Taemin laughed softly. "Your father would have hated this. My father died alone chasing power, leaving me with nothing but fear and anger. I won't do that to them. I won't be him. So what are you going to be?" Jae-won thought about the question. About the man he'd been, cold, controlled, untouchable. About the man he was becoming, uncertain, vulnerable, trying. "I'm going to be their father," he said simply. "That's enough. That's everything. Good luck," Taemin said quietly. "You're going to need it." "I know." He hung up, turned off his phone, and walked through the house, checking on each sleeping child. Jin, curled up with a book about space. Minho, surrounded by stuffed animals. Hajun, holding a photo of Minseo. Seojun, sprawled across his bed like he owned the world. 4 hearts, 4 futures, 4 reasons to be better. 6 months later, Jae-won stood in the backyard watching his sons play. They'd adapted, thrived even. Jin excelled in school, already reading at a 3rd grade level. Minho had joined a science club and wouldn't stop talking about volcanoes. Hajun took piano lessons and filled the house with music. Seojun played soccer and brought home so many participation trophies that Jae-won had to build a special shelf. They had friends, play dates, normal problems like homework and bedtime negotiations. They had a life. And Jae-won had learned what love actually meant. Not the easy kind. Not the convenient kind. but the kind that woke you up at 3 a.m. when someone had a nightmare. The kind that made you sit through children's theater productions. The kind that taught you patience you never knew you had and broke you open in ways you never knew you needed. "Dad," Seo-jun called. "Come push me on the swing." "Dad." The word still landed like a miracle every time. Jae-won crossed the yard, pushed the swing, and listened to his son's laughter echo into the evening sky. He'd given up an empire, but he'd gained a kingdom. 4 small boys who'd conquered the unconquerable, a man who thought he was too broken to love. Behind him, the house glowed with warm light. Inside, dinner was cooking. He'd learned, badly but enthusiastically. Jin was setting the table. Minho was arguing about dinosaurs. Hajun was practicing piano. This was his empire now. Built not on fear, but on love. Not on power, but on presence. Not on what he could take, but on what he could give. "Higher!" Seo-jun shrieked, joy pure and uncontained. And Jae-won pushed higher, laughing, letting go of everything he'd been to become everything they needed. The Korean crime lord who'd ruled through fear. The divorced man who'd chosen solitude. The broken boy who'd never learned to grieve. All of it fell away, leaving only this: a father, 4 sons, and a love that had saved them all. The end.